Hello and welcome to the Fenway CDC's 49th annual meeting. My name is Matt Wildman. I go by the pronouns he, him. I am a Fenway CDC board member, and we are grateful that you've chosen to spend your evening with us. Thank you for being here. Please take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat. You can share your name, pronouns. In keeping with our theme, we're all in this together. What makes a Fenway special community to you? For me, it's the diversity that the Fenway neighborhood offers the great city of Boston. Let's review some of their meeting logistics. This event is being recorded and will be shared on social media and our website. If you prefer not to be recorded, we recommend that you turn off your camera. Please remember to keep yourself muted unless you are speaking. We hope that you will use the chat to connect with your neighbors. And a reminder on how to use and access the chat: at the bottom of your right-hand screen is a chat button. Click on that and it will bring up the chat box. If you need technical support, please type in the chat and Nick will help you out. After our meeting, we will share the recording from tonight's event and any unanswered questions via email. And last but not least, enjoy yourselves. Let's take a moment to review what we have planned for our evening together. We have an exciting hour ahead of us: a year in review, elections, awards, and of course, an exciting keynote address by Speaker Ellen LaPointe, who is the CEO of Fenway Health. And do stay on until the end for a chance to win our raffle prizes. Thank you to our elected officials and our staffers joining today. Thank you, Senator Will Brownsberger, Senator and City Councilor Lydia Edwards, Representative Jay Livingston, Representative John Santiago, Councilor Kenzie Bach, Councilor Tanya Fernandez Anderson, Chief of Housing Sheila Dillon, and Molly Griffin from the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services. And now I am pleased to hand it over to Sarah Genesis, a Fenway CDC board member and co-chair of the organizing committee.
Thanks, Matt. As we pass the 2-year mark of the pandemic, we want to take a moment of reflection. We hold in our hearts our family, friends, and neighbors that we have lost due to COVID. We recognize that the pandemic has disproportionately impacted communities of color and exposed deep racial inequalities. Yet we are hopeful for that a bright future is ahead, that our recovery will center racial justice, and that our community will continue to come together and support one another. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you all. I would also like to take a moment to reflect and acknowledge that the land we are on, the Fenway, was stolen from the indigenous Pawtucket and Massachusetts people. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced occupation on this land. We extend our respect to the citizens of these nations who live here today, their ancestors, and all indigenous people. We also affirm that this acknowledgement is insufficient. It does not undo the harm that has been done and continues against indigenous people, their land, and their water. Please join me in a moment of reflection. Thank you for joining us in those moments of reflection and acknowledgement. I'm now going to pass it over to Matt Thal, Fenway CDC's Board Vice President.
Thanks, Sarah. I have the honor of sharing my gratitude to some of the people at the heart of Fenway CDC. First, I'd like to recognize my fellow board of directors. Board members bring the energy, creative thinking, and passion that guide and enrich this organization's work. They are President Nikki Flionis, Treasurer Tim Coakley, Clerk Mia Jean Sicard, and Directors Sonia Babalia, Ryan Boxell, Brian Clegg, Greg Haig, Amelia Hill, Nilda Hughes, Sarah Janess, Joanne McKenna, Chanel Parker, Franklin Ross, Rosaria Salerno, James Smith, and Matt Wildman. We'd also like to acknowledge Evan Ramsey and Holly Berry, who both stepped down from the board this year, but have contributed so much. I'm grateful to work alongside this inspiring and dedicated group of people. And thank you to our amazing staff who bring Fenway CDC's work to life. Our executive director, Leah Kamhai, has brought together an outstanding team. Because of them, we are building affordable housing, growing our membership, organizing to expand affordable housing throughout the city, and working to build racial equity in our community. Thank you to Executive Director Leah Kamhai, to our housing department, Sunith John, Nick Pittman, Madeline Lee, and Drefney Limperville. Our community programs team, Chris Anderson, Anar Kansara, and Diego Soler. Our planning and organizing department, Richard Giordano, Cassie White, and Ishraq Budileb. Our finance and administration department, Michelle Reinstein and Hong Lee, and our marketing and development department, Iris Tan. I'd also like to recognize staff who have departed since our last annual meeting for all their contributions. Jasmine Vargas, Fenner Dreyfus-Weld, Bo Jensen, and Troy Heggie. We'd like to also take a moment to recognize our wonderful building captains. The past year, we had a challenging property management transition, and our building captains stuck with us, continued to show up, and shared their time and energy to help us be our best. We could not do our work without our building captains, and we look forward to our continued work together. Our building captains are Angela Ayala, Ms. Margaret Campbell, Nicole Clark, Robin Edwards, Karen Gardner, Irish Jackson, Tanisha Moody, and James Smith. I'd also like to thank a former building captain, Jan Gatson Louisant, and a Fenway CDC resident, Nakia Clark, for their contributions to the building captains meetings and the work they've done for their neighbors. And now I will hand it over to Leah Kamhai.
Thank you, Matt, for that wonderful acknowledgement. I'm now excited to share with you all our year in review. Just when we thought that it was safe to come back out in the world, COVID and its various iterations knocked us back down again. But we responded vigorously, not only by providing basic services such as food, safety gear, also known as PPE, rental assistance, but by doing what we do best, and that's organizing for systems change, creating affordable housing opportunities, and launching a new career ladder with our college and university partners. I also want to take a moment to thank all of our public and private partners. Many of you are on this call tonight for continuing to support our work, making it possible for us to carry on. Please join me in watching this year in review video.
Thank you, Leah, for that. And very impressive. Staff, board, community partners, what a year we had. Moving on to the board election, I want to thank FCDC members Holly Berry and Lauren Dewey Platt for working with me on this slate for the election. Up for re-election this year are Sonia Babalia, Nilda Hughes, Mia Jean Sicard, Sarah Janess, and Joanne McKenna. In order to vote, you must be a resident of the Fenway and have been a member of the Fenway CDC before or on March 7th, 2022. If you are a Fenway resident and think you are eligible to vote, or if you are not sure, you can still cast your vote and we will check our records. In a moment, you will see a pop-up on your screen. If you are voting, you can select an option, yes or no. If you are not voting, you can choose abstain or simply wait until the poll closes. We will now open the poll and wait 2 minutes to allow members to vote. Thank you all for participating in this. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you all for participating in this election. We are thrilled that our board member re-elections have been successful, and we look forward to another exciting year working with all of you to make the Fenway CDC and the Fenway a brighter place to be. And now I will hand things over to Mia Jean Sicard, Fenway CDC's board clerk. Mia?
Thanks, Nikki. I'm pleased to share with you the honorees of the Community Service Awards, who are District 8 City Councilor Kenzie Bach, Fenway Cares, and Chris Anderson. The three awardees really encompass what community service means here in the Fenway. From advocating for affordable housing and transit, responding to our neighborhood's needs throughout the pandemic, and creating numerous workforce development and resident services programs to support our residents. We are blessed to have such incredible leaders in our community. And now I'm thrilled to share with you all a video message from our awardees.
Hi, Fenway CDC. I'm Councilor Kenzie Bach. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I've been representing the Fenway for the past 3 years. For me, community service means recognizing that each of us is nothing without our community. It's community that makes us who we are and gives us a place in the world to thrive. What I love especially about Fenway is the deep history in this neighborhood of fighting for people of all incomes and backgrounds to have stable homes to stay rooted in our community. From rental housing to cooperative housing, Fenway CDC has always been at the center of that fight. And just in my brief time on the council, you fought alongside me to remove parking minimums for affordable housing, raise IDP and linkage rates, and ask our pilot institutions to pay their fair share. And when we win rental housing, like at Burbank Terrace, you've also been central to steward that housing across many decades. So I'm extremely honored to be receiving this award from Fenway CDC tonight. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Robert Kornbrock, and I'm the Executive Director of Fenway Community Center. And I use the he, him pronoun series. It's an honor to be here today accepting this award on behalf of the 6 organizations comprise the Fenway Cares mutual aid effort. When we started Fenway Cares in March of 2020, it began, like many other efforts during the early days of the pandemic, as sort of a desperate attempt to figure out a way that we could support our community. And it began with an initial food distribution in partnership with Councillor Bach in April of 2020, through which the Fenway Cares organizations, which are Audubon Circle Neighborhood Association, Fenway Alliance, the Fenway CDC, Fenway Civic Association, Fenway Community Center, and Operation Peace, sourced volunteers to help with distributing food. And out of that, we were able to successfully write some grant proposals, bring some support from local businesses, such as Samuels and Associates and Northeastern, and a number of volunteer groups that to today have resulted in, across 2 different sites in the neighborhood, a distribution of 10,000 free bags of fresh produce every 2 weeks. And it's something that we're incredibly excited to be able to continue through 2022 with the hope to be able to do so beyond through the financial support through various sources, including the ARPA funds that State Representative Jay Livingstone was able to write into the budget, and individual donations, and just this collective effort from the neighborhood. So again, we humbly thank you for recognizing this community effort that is Fenway Cares.
Hi, my name is Chris Anderson. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I grew up in the Fenway. My family has lived in the Fenway for more than 30 years. I lived at number 15 Hemingway Street. My grandfather lived at number 19. Most of the families who resided at 1525 back in the day were community activists and strong proponents of racial, social justice, and equity. Stephen Brophy, former editor of the Fenway News, his wife Teresa and son Benjamin lived on the top floor. David Secondris, former Boston City Councilor, lived on the first floor. I lived on the second floor. And so that's where the seeds of the Fenway CDC were planted in my building. And eventually my mom, Jean Tibbs, became a board member of the Fenway CDC. I started out volunteering and eventually working for Fenway CDC for 17 years. I was a child of the 50s and the 60s, around civil rights. So at an early age, I knew it was very important to show respect and compassion for the less fortunate and become an active member of my community and advocate for those who didn't have a voice. Madeline Wright Elderman, the founder of and president of the Children's Defense Fund, she said, service is the rent we pay for being. It is the very purpose of life and not something you simply do in your spare time. So I really feel that serving is providing a purpose. Fenway is special because of its community residents who share common values, interests, attitudes. It's a feeling, it's a sense of togetherness and positivity. So.
I will now pass it to Cassie White, lead community organizer, to share how you can get involved with the Fenway CDC.
Thanks, Mia. In addition to our board, staff, and building captains, Fenway CDC relies on each of you, our members, community advocates, and leaders, to continue our work for a more equitable Fenway. No matter how much time, your skills, or experience, we would love to work with you in the coming year. So I'll share a few ways that you can get involved with our work. We have 4 committees that are open for anyone to join. They're a great way to meet your neighbors, share your skills, and learn new skills. Urban Village reviews and assesses the impacts of development on the Fenway. You can contact Richard. Community Organizing works on campaigns for affordable housing and is an opportunity to develop and share your skills as an advocate, and you can contact me. Resident Services promotes wellness, self-sufficiency, and opportunities with residents of Fenway CDC buildings. Contact Chris if you're interested. Lastly, you can contact Madeline if you're interested in applying your skills, knowledge, or background to support our housing development work in the neighborhood. As a membership organization, becoming a member is a great way to get engaged and to stay in touch with our programs and our events. Membership is free and it's pretty easy to sign up for. Just hover your phone camera over this QR code on the screen, or you can go to our website to sign up. The link is in the chat and will also be in our follow-up email. The membership form is available in English, Spanish, Mandarin, and Russian. Throughout the year, we have community events where you're invited to volunteer. Fair Foods distributes free bags of produce to community members every other week at Holy Trinity Orthodox Cathedral on Wednesdays and 607 Columbus on Thursdays. We're excited to be working with Fenway Alliance and Fenway Civic Association on Porch Fest, an in-person music festival on July 9th, so mark your calendars. You are also invited to help us celebrate Halloween and Thanksgiving with our neighbors, hopefully in person this year. Please contact Diego Soler if you're interested in volunteering in any of these events or learning more. We look forward to hearing from you. Now I will pass it off to Greg Haig, Fenway CDC board member, to introduce our keynote speaker.
Great, thank you, Cassie, and thank you all for being here tonight at our 49th annual meeting, which is amazing to think that we've been here in the Fenway Fenway neighborhood for 49 years. I'm really honored to introduce Ellen LaPointe as our keynote speaker this evening. Ellen has been Chief Executive Officer of Fenway Health since March of 2020. She's held numerous leadership roles in the nonprofit and public health sectors, working in social justice, research, LGBTQ and HIV advocacy, as well as health policy, law, and equity over the last 3 decades. Prior to joining Fenway, she was President and Chief Executive Officer of Northern California Grantmakers in San Francisco, a nonprofit that brings together Bay Area philanthropy to advance the common good. Previously, Ellen served as Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Hope Lab, an operating foundation that focuses on technology-based approaches to promoting positive health behavior. She began her career as a coordinator of the Brown University AIDS program, where she was involved in some of the earliest efforts to ensure access to promising experimental AIDS treatments and life-saving care. A native of Maine, Ellen earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from Brown University and a JD degree from the University of California, Berkeley School of Law. Ellen, thank you for being here tonight, and we look forward to your comments.
Thank you, Greg. I think the only thing I would add to your very generous introduction is that I do use she, series pronouns. And before I go further, I also want to express my gratitude and support for the very gracious land acknowledgement that was offered at the beginning of this program. I think that was terrific. Thank you. So, hi, everybody. It's really, truly a delight to be here tonight. You know, as you already know, Fenway CDC is an absolutely incredible organization. And since 1973, 49 years, you've stayed true to this mission of yours, this founding mission, which is to ensure that individuals and families have access to affordable housing. At Fenway Health, we have a really strong kinship with that history because since 1971, 51 years, Fenway Health has stayed true to our original mission, which was to provide healthcare to people who could not get it anywhere else. So both of these incredible organizations were founded out of necessity in response to inequity and injustice. For Fenway CDC, the injustice was the obliteration of an entire neighborhood, the West End of Boston, and in the name of urban renewal. And for Fenway Health, the injustice was the scarcity and sometimes outright denial of healthcare to LGBTQIA+ people and older adults and students, especially young women who did not want their parents notified if they were seeking healthcare, seeking care. So, of course, a lot has happened in the decades that have passed. And while both Fenway CDC and Fenway Health remain true to our original visions and to the communities who compelled us to mobilize in the first place, both organizations have expanded our efforts exponentially as we came to understand and embrace the complexity and the interrelatedness of the issues in the lives of the people who have come to count on us. I loved that review of the year. I mean, what an astonishing thing. You have managed all the things you've done. You know, both of our organizations have become beacons in the work that drives us. Both of these organizations have earned many victories, and both have suffered through difficulty and setbacks and adversity. Both organizations continue to thrive, and both are looking forward to a future full of challenge and promise. So I think one really important reason for this is that we don't try to go it alone. We understand that we're all in it together with and for the people we serve, and with other community-based organizations, and with other allies, and with partners who share our values and our vision for the future. So as many of you know, Fenway Health started as a drop-in center. It was located in the basement of a building on Huntington Avenue. It was open on Thursday nights only. It was staffed entirely by volunteers, and it was furnished with tables and chairs and medical equipment that was donated by a Back Bay doctor. Today, we provide care to more than 34,000 patients. During the heart of the COVID crisis, we were actually caring for people in 38 states via telehealth. We are one of just 36 community health centers in the country to have been recognized by the U.S. Health and Human Health Resources and Services Administration for exceeding national clinical quality benchmarks for chronic disease management and preventive care. About half of our patients identify as LGBTQIA+, and about 4,200 of them are transgender or gender diverse. We care for the largest number of trans and gender non-binary people in New England, and we are one of the largest employers of trans and gender non-binary people in the region. We're very proud of that. We provide care to approximately 2,200 people living with HIV, which makes us the largest non-hospital provider of comprehensive HIV services in the New England region. And about a little over a third actually, of our patients earn less than $26,000 a year. And most of the patients in this demographic are either trans-identified or BIPOC or both. And of course, we're here for all of you here in our neighborhood, regardless of your identity or your background. We are absolutely, truly very, very proud to be your neighborhood health center. One of the first clinicians to volunteer at our drop-in clinic back in the day was a medical student named Ken Mayer. Today, Dr. Mayer is an internationally known scientist and researcher who was at the forefront of efforts to develop really powerful biomedical HIV prevention intervention like PrEP. And he's also been a leader in ongoing efforts to develop an HIV vaccine. He is the co-director of the Fenway Institute, which is the policy and research arm of Fenway Health. Last year, the researchers affiliated with the Fenway Institute published 165 papers in peer-reviewed journals that brought new knowledge to the fields of public health, LGBTQIA+ healthcare, best practices in working with transgender and gender diverse children, adolescents, and adults, and smart data collection for the purpose of mitigating and eliminating healthcare disparities based on race and ethnicity and gender and sexual orientation. In 2020, we leveraged that whole research infrastructure we had developed running HIV trials to participate in COVID-19 research. That was quite a thing to be able to do and to find ourselves having to do, of course. Our team ran a phase 3 clinical trial of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine, and we participated in a study of COVID-19 antibodies that was designed to help us learn more about how they could be used to potentially stop the spread of COVID-19. We've partnered with other community-based organizations to make sure the participants in our research studies are racially diverse and representative of the communities we serve. And in addition to providing high-quality clinical care and engaging in the research that shapes these clinical care guidelines, we use our voice when public policies impacting the lives and families and communities that we serve and who count on us are being advanced. So again, if we learned anything from our early beginnings in the 1980s to the present moment with COVID-19 and looking ahead now, it's that we are all in this together. We really have to partner with our allies across issues and identities to make progress. In 2020, Fenway Health joined a broad coalition of healthcare providers, LGBTQIA+ advocacy groups, and patients as a plaintiff in a lawsuit against the Trump administration to challenge a decision by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services that would have eliminated protections against sexual orientation and gender identity discrimination in healthcare that had been put in place by the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. Of the number of lawsuits that were filed to reverse that discriminatory new rule, the one we are part of is the only one that's actually still active in the courts. Other lawsuits were focused really narrowly on sexual orientation and gender identity and the impacts there. By contrast, the lawsuit that we joined also focused on discrimination against people living with HIV and other chronic illnesses, people who have obtained or are seeking reproductive health care, including abortions, and language access for patients with limited English proficiency, including immigrants. In 2020, our organization formally committed to becoming an anti-racist organization. Our board of directors unanimously approved a 5-year strategic plan that is centered around a racial equity action plan. We are really proactively and intentionally working to transform our systems, our policies, our procedures, our protocols to center race, equity in everything that we do, to eliminate the disparities and inequities that have historically existed in the services that we provide and the people that we reach and the outcomes that we achieve. One big way, or one big piece of this work, has been to establish multiple ways in for folks to access our care and services. So I'm going to give you an example of what that looks like in practice. We know that of the about 800 or so new HIV diagnoses that are made each year in Massachusetts, gay men and transgender women are among the most vulnerable to infection. And specifically, gay men in their teens and 20s continue to be at highest risk. 15 years ago, young gay men accounted for about 29% of new HIV infections in Massachusetts. Today, that number is 45%. Black and Latinx and Hispanic queer men in their teens and early 20s are a much higher risk for HIV infection than their white peers. 2 out of 5 gay men with HIV under 24 are Hispanic or Latinx, and 1 in 5 are Black. This is highly disproportionate, as you know, relative to the overall population in our community. HIV is affecting immigrants. Among the Asian and Pacific Islanders who are newly infected with HIV in Massachusetts, 3/4 of them are new residents in our country. And racial disparities are even more stark among trans women living with HIV, a stunning about nearly half of whom are Latinx and 30% of whom are Black. And people of all races who inject substances account for 15% of new HIV infections. So, knowing that young gay and Latinx and Hispanic men are among those most in need of our services right now, Fenway Health's bilingual peer education educators launched a program to use social media apps to reach these young men. So over about 6 months or so, Fenway Health staff had about just over 5,000 conversations with users of these apps. Sexual health information was shared in just under half of those conversations. 136 of the app users made appointments with Fenway Health, and 90 people kept those appointments. Of those 90, 40%, 2 in 5 again, were Latinx, 30% of whom were born outside the US. Another 2 in 5 were under 25 years old, and 40% were between 26 and 35 years old. Nearly a quarter were uninsured. A quarter of these people tested positive for STIs and received treatment. A quarter began taking PrEP, and 4 were diagnosed with HIV and are now connected to medical care. So this is the kind of high-touch outreach that needs to happen, and it's what we're committed to doing to ensure that we are visible and accessible to everyone who needs our services. Because again, if you're sensing a theme, here it is, we are in this together. And this brings me in, I guess, what I would have to concede is a pretty meandering fashion to the theme of my talk tonight, which is really building strong community preventing isolation, and improving mental and emotional well-being. So in 2019, a community health needs assessment by the Chip Collaborative revealed a few really important things about this community, our neighborhood here. Fenway neighborhood residents had among the highest rates of mental health related hospitalizations in the city. About 1 in 10 Fenway residents reported experiencing persistent sadness. 1 in 5 reported experiencing persistent anxiety. And not surprisingly, stress and anxiety and depression were most frequently cited challenges among all Boston residents who are LGBTQIA+ and or BIPOC and or low income and or immigrants and or people who are either in their teens or over age 65. And all of these conditions have worsened with the pandemic. There was a survey that was done by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. It was released just this past February, found that more than over a quarter of Massachusetts adults have reported that they need behavioral health care for themselves. And the level of need is disproportionately higher among younger adults ages 19 through 39, BIPOC individuals, and adults with lower family incomes. So in this context, I would just want to say behavioral health encompasses services for mental health and well-being and also for substance abuse disorders. So I believe, and I suspect you would agree with me, that the best response to this urgent need is a community-based response, which is why we are so excited about the partnership Fenway Health was formed with Fenway CDC and Fenway Cares. So the official name for our partnership is the Fenway Kenmore Community Collective. We're here for you, that's what we're calling it. It's going to be the largest community engagement initiative in the Fenway Kenmore neighborhood in recent memory, perhaps not ever, but certainly in a long time. Over the course of this 2-year project, which is funded by the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, we have 3 goals, and they're based on a recent community needs assessment of the Fenway neighborhood. The first will be to increase the financial stability of residents, because over half in the most recent survey reported that they are concerned about having enough money. The second is to ensure that all residents have access to healthy food, because 1 in 4 people have reported that they have trouble affording nutritious food. And the third is to improve access to healthcare, because 1 in 5 residents are reporting that they have unmet healthcare needs. So a lot like the story I told you earlier about finding ways to ensure that the young gay men who need Fenway Health services right now are not just aware of the services we provide, but able to access them. The central component of this partnership is going to be to connect residents with services that are already available and about which folks may not be aware. Really, in nearly every instance, help is available for people who are suffering, but it's not always easy to find. We know this. And one of the really exciting things about which I think we're all very hopeful with this project is that by really intentionally and intensively coordinating our outreach, we're going to increase that knowledge about existing resources and increase access. So this is a very, very powerful way to build community and to create connections. As we continue to deal with the long-term effects of this pandemic, I suspect that the potential for partnerships like ours to respond to community need are only going to continue to grow. And in the meantime, I think I want to just say that probably one of the most powerful things that each of us can do to reduce individual and community suffering is to speak, to name it, to speak honestly about what's happening. I'm just going to say, the obvious. These past 2 years have been incredibly difficult for all of us. The elevated stress and anxiety and the other impacts of the sustained low and sometimes not so low grade trauma that we have all endured over the last 2 years has absolutely taken a toll. There is nothing okay about not being able to see the people you love in person. It is not okay to fear that a run to the grocery store could result in a fatal viral infection. And although we've become very used to it, and thank God for this technology, there's absolutely nothing normal about holding a celebratory annual meeting like this on TV, okay? It's just not right. So these are hard things. And it's really, I think, only by acknowledging it and naming it, and then to the extent that we're able, being honest and forthcoming about our struggles, are we going to be able to reduce the stigma that is still attached to behavioral health needs that are caused, again, by illness, by food and housing insecurity, and by financial strain. So at Fenway Health, we are absolutely honored to be in it together with the Fenway Community Development Corporation and with every one of you. Really, we are neighbors, we are collaborators, we are all very good people doing very good work. We are really laying the groundwork for a better future, we're really fantastic. We really are. So I'm grateful to be here, and really look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ellen, for those inspiring remarks. To our attendees, please continue to put your questions in the chat and we will get to as many as possible. If you're a non-English speaker, please use the raise hand feature to indicate if you have a question. Again, please allow only non-English speakers to use the raise hand feature to ask a question. All English speakers, please place your questions in the chat. As a reminder, in order for folks listening in English to hear the interpreters, please go to the interpretation globe at the bottom of your Zoom screen and choose English. All right, to kick things off, I have a couple of questions. Ellen, you mentioned the importance of not only working together as community partners, but directly reaching out to the people in our neighborhood to improve the health of our community. As we know, the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the already existing disparities that disproportionately affect LGBTQIA populations and BIPOC communities, as you said. In what ways can we, as community partners, approach destigmatizing behavioral health issues and making behavioral health services more accessible, especially for populations and communities that don't necessarily have the time and/or privilege to seek it out themselves?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a very, very important question. So thank you. I think well, as I would just go back to some of what I just said earlier, as I mentioned, it's really important for health centers and hospitals and providers and community organizations to really try to provide multiple ways in for people to access services. We are all whole people, and we may show up at the door for one thing, but we show up with a host of needs. And so getting ourselves accustomed to asking a wide range of questions to try to surface unmet needs that may go beyond the narrow focus of what we may happen to be able to offer in any given time is going to be really, really key. The expression, meeting people where they are, it's used all the time. It might even feel a little bit cliche, but it's really true. That example I used about the way we're working with social media apps now to reach young gay, Hispanic, and Latinx men is spot on. I mean, this is where folks are, and so we go there. We don't expect them to come to us. I think another thing we really learned through that experience, and really through a lot of experiences here at Fenway Health, is just how can we reduce and even eliminate the friction that people experience when they are in fact ready to engage. So how many steps does it take, or clicks or calls do they have to do to make an appointment? How many forms do they have to fill out? Are the forms readable? Are they available in the right languages? What payment do we accept? Do people know something's free if it's free? How long is the wait? These are questions like, can you get a live person on the phone? I suspect for any of you who've had to deal with a problem with your cable in your house, you know how quickly you can become demoralized and just hang up. This is the kind of thing that stops people from accessing needed care and services. These incremental systems improvements can have a huge impact. So regarding the stigma, again, I'm just going to reiterate what I said earlier. I just think the more we can all be as honest as we can about mental health and challenges, the better. Simone Biles did the world an enormous solid, such a service when she was so generous and honest about what she was facing at the Olympics. I mean, I think we can all, and especially those of us who are community leaders, and I think a lot of folks on this in this meeting are, when we engage with our own friends and family and community institutions and faith institutions, it really is good to be candid about our own struggles and the struggles we observe in our communities, and being willing to seek support when we need it and make sure people around us feel like they can do that. Although I guess, well, it's a little you can try to follow Simone's example, I suppose, but not onto the balance beam. Don't try to follow her there. And I'm not making light of this, but I think just the more human and real we can all be with one another, the better.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Before we continue the question and answer session, we are going to take a pause to pass it over to Richard Giordano, Director of Policy and Planning, to introduce the mayor.
I have a tough job. Thank you. It is my great honor to introduce the mayor of the city of Boston, Michelle Wu. We know that you and your administration have been hard at work with a lot of recent exciting announcements, particularly for affordable housing. I'll hit 3 or 4 of them quick, and then it's your floor. So far, just so folks know, the mayor has managed to get the waiving of the parking requirements for affordable housing through the council and passed, so that's financially feasible to build affordable housing. She's formed a rent stabilization advisory committee to make sure that community members can afford to stay in Boston. She signed a home rule petition for a transfer fee that could generate approximately $100 million a year for affordable housing. So we need our State House to pass that. She's working on ways to strengthen the inclusionary development policy and the linkage policy. And she's rallied with us to support the reimagining of the 55 bus route and a more equitable transit system. All of this in less than 6 months. So we're incredibly grateful to have Mayor Michelle Wu as our mayor, a housing justice champion and partner. We look forward to continuing to work with her for a long, long time. Madam Mayor, it's yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rich. And thank you everyone for inviting me. It's really exciting to see you. And I'm now a little over 140 days in, but some parts of the job feel really familiar and joyfully familiar, like being part of this annual event with you all. So thank you for always centering our communities in the work and moving with the urgency of our communities. As Rich mentioned, a major priority of our administration is seeing, funding, and creating affordable housing as the foundation for our recovery from this pandemic. We are going to be introducing our budget after a lot of community feedback and a new process this year. Our budget will come out next week, and we are tentatively planned to put more than $350 million into a 3-year investment in housing affordability and housing stability across the operating budget, capital budget, and federal recovery funds. Of course, this is the starting point next week for lots of conversations with my colleagues on the city council and a partnership about how those dollars will be carefully allocated, invested, measured, and deliver impacts. But we know that across the entire city, housing and how expensive and how much the stress and worry and inequities that we see through the housing market really account for challenges in addressing each and every other issue in our city as well. It is housing instability that feeds into challenges in our classrooms. It is housing instability that is connected to whether someone can take a job or choose to live and stay in the city. And so we are tackling that from an all hands on deck approach. We're also tackling that from an intersectional approach, because housing can't be siloed off from transportation reliability and accessibility and affordability. Housing has to be deeply connected to climate resiliency. We know that the majority of our buildings in the city of Boston need to be retrofitted with energy efficient insulation and solar panels and green infrastructure in order to make sure that the type of housing that we're offering our residents is healthy and stabilizing and safe from the impacts of climate change, and not just somewhere where you can have a shelter for the night. Housing is also deeply connected, as I mentioned before, to our education system and our economy. So it is the number one challenge that I hear from employers in our city of how do we keep growing and building our city to make it truly a city for everyone. So thank you so much for all of your work. Fenway CDC has always been an advocate on so many issues, certainly a leader when it comes to housing affordability, but as Rich mentioned, also on transportation access and coordinated services and the many ways in which we need to build community, first of all, to be able to build advocacy and power. So I can't wait to see you all in person, hopefully at some point as the weather warms up, and really, really grateful for all of your continued work and leadership. We are here to partner, here to make a big difference, and we know that that has to come from following the lead of those organizations with relationships on the ground. So very eager to continue this partnership.
Thank you so much, Mayor Wu. And we will see you soon because you've got the neighborhood coffee hours coming up shortly in May, I think. Molly, maybe you can put that date in the chat. And now I'd like to pass this back over to Anar, and we'll run with the rest of our program. Thank you, Mayor Wu. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much, Richard. And thank you again to Mayor Wu for her wonderful remarks. Going back into the question and answer session, speaking of housing affordability, like we heard from Mayor Wu's remarks, Fenway CDC has been an advocate for affordable housing to preserve the Fenway as a healthy and vibrant neighborhood for 49 years. Ellen, what are your thoughts on the importance of housing for good health, and how can Fenway Health and Fenway CDC work together to foster an environment that is conducive to overall health?
Well, the mayor just, said it, right? I mean, safe and stable housing and food security are basically foundational to good health and well-being, period. Full stop, that's it. I mean, people who start every day not knowing where they're going to sleep or how they're going to get their next meal really can't prioritize anything else in their lives. People who live in unsafe neighborhoods and who are afraid to go outside cannot thrive. People who have to pay disproportionate amounts of money of their paycheck to cover their rent are going to have to sacrifice other things like healthy food or medicine or warm clothing. I mean, these are basics, right? People who live in substandard conditions, we know this, they're at higher risk for a host of health conditions and injuries. So, and living with the chronic stress of housing insecurity is itself can have adverse health consequences. I mean, that's the mental health well-being piece of it we're talking about tonight. This kind of low-grade stress, that it actually hurts us physically, and it doesn't take that long to start having those impacts. And on the flip side, research actually shows us that having a sense of home actually, it really has a direct relationship to one's well-being. So one of the things I think we're really excited about with our partnership with Fenway CDC is that the neighborhood residents who connect with Fenway CDC and have unmet healthcare needs are going to be directed to us. Then that's great. And over time, I think what we're going to see happen with this partnership as we really develop our collaborative muscles, we're going to find new ways to really develop synergies with the services that we offer to meet the needs of the people in this community to whom we're all devoted. And again, and I think as important as we get better at this, members of our community are really going to come to see that they can count on us for this. They're going to see that these connections and this commitment are real. And that's going to reinforce that we're all in it together, like neighbors. So.
Thank you so much. I think that is all the time we have for questions. Thank you everyone for your questions and engagement. If we weren't able to get to your question, we will do our best to follow up with you. A big thank you to Ellen for sharing your time and energy with us. We look forward to continuing to work together to strengthen our Fenway community. Now I will hand things over to Nilda Hughes, a Fenway CDC board member, for our raffle.
Thank you, Anar. Good evening, everyone. We are giving away some special prizes as a thank you for being with us tonight. We are excited to be highlighting just a few of the many amazing small businesses in our neighborhood. So let's get ready for the winners. We have Priscilla Louie. She gets a gift card from Blackbird Donut. Robert Mann, a gift card from Salon Nikki. Lisa Fay, a gift card from Event Tide, Fenway. And Michael Ventura, a gift card from Basho. The winners will be reached with from Hang Lee, and she will coordinate a pickup time with you. And congratulations and enjoy. So now I will hand it over to Sonia, Fenway CDC board member. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for being with us tonight for our 49th annual meeting. It was great to celebrate with our community leaders, look back on our achievements of 2021, and hear inspiring words from Ellen LaPointe. Thank you to all the staff for putting this event together, to the board for providing insight, of course to our interpreters for providing language support to ensure our community members could participate fully, and to you all, the Fenway community, for your dedication to our neighborhood. And of course, as Ellen and all of our speakers have said tonight, we are all in this together. Please feel free to stay on to use the photo booth and the Whirl game and to reconnect with your neighbors. Thank you so much again for being here, and have a great evening.